Good evening and welcome to this special edition of The Latest. The most crucial budget since World War II has just been delivered and there's a lot of fresh detail and new information tonight. I'll be joined by Australia's best political and financial experts, the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, and his Labor counterpart, Jim Chalmers. Tax cuts, job incentives, healthcare and mental health. Can this COVID budget pull us out of recession? And what ends up in your pocket? We've spent hours pulling it all apart. Our coverage begins now.
The latest from 7 News with Michael Usher.
First, let's look at the key information that will affect you, and stay with me. The numbers are huge and will cause some economic heartburn for years to come, but there's some immediate sweet relief. Starting with the JobMaker scheme, which kicks off tomorrow, bosses will be offered $200 a week for every new unemployed worker they take on under the age of 30 and $100 a week for those in the 30 to 35 age bracket. Each person must work for 20 hours a week, a scheme to support 450,000 jobs for the next year. There are also some welcome tax cuts. People earning between $45,000 and $90,000 will save $30 a week, and during the next financial year, $20 a week. On earnings of $100,000, a saving of $45 a week this year, $30 next. $110,000 will save $60 a week, and $120,000 and above will save $70 a week. Now, for the bad news, the numbers are big. A $213.7 billion deficit this year, predicted to fall to $66.9 billion by 2023. National debt of $703 billion, which will keep rising. There it is, to a staggering $966 billion. Revenues are expected to plummet $284 billion over the next 4 years, while spending will soar by $237 billion, which leaves an ominous black hole of $521 billion, a lot of zeros. The Treasurer predicted the unemployment rate will average 7.25% this year and will fall to 5.5% in 4 years. Economic growth is minus 1.5% this year, but quickly rebounding next year. A $250 handout in December and again in March for those on the age pensioned and other recipients that are listed right there on the screen. For small and large businesses, instant asset write-offs extended and loss carrybacks, allowing COVID losses up to June 2022 to be claimed against previous profits. An extra $101 million for mental health. Medicare-funded sessions, this is big news, will be doubled from 10. And a regional push with a $2 billion road safety upgrade plan and another $1 billion set aside for footpaths and street lighting. I'm joined now from Canberra by our 7 political editor, Mark Riley, and finance editor, Gemma Acton, who's in the studio with me now. Good evening to you both. Mark, let's start with you. Is your mind spinning from all those numbers, firstly? And what's your $966 billion in debt? What's your takeaway from this budget, Mark?
Yeah, good evening, Michael. Yeah, my mind is rattling with all those numbers. They are enormous. I never thought I'd see anything like it, but it's a horror story, let's face it. And we're doing better than most countries in the world. This has been an unprecedented time. We've found a $500 billion hole blown in the budget when you add up the lost revenue and the increased spending, and those debt and deficit numbers are just unimaginable, and we'll be paying them off for a very, very long time. The good thing is that interest rates are low, so the payments won't be as big as they otherwise could have been. Interesting here, Michael, that the government's objective is all about job creation, looking at those numbers, the deficit numbers, to get the economy humming again, to try and get the money running through the economy and paying back that debt and deficit. So about 1 million jobs is what they're looking at, 450,000 of them under 35 years of age. The problem I see with that is that it is a distortion in the labour market. What if you're a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old and you've just lost your job and you're the major breadwinner? You now go into a labour market where you're competing against younger potential employees who are carrying with them this sack of money to employers. So it puts you at a competitive disadvantage at a time of life when you desperately need to get back into work to provide for your family. I see that as a big problem. The other issue that women were looking for is universal free healthcare. We had it for a while in the teeth of the crisis. no more. It's not coming under this government, and Labor is not saying whether they will do it either. But there are some good things there. You picked up the mental health plan there being doubled from 10 to 20 consultations covered by Medicare. A really, really good thing for the government to be doing at a time like this, because all the mental health services tell us they're already overloaded.
It's going to be needed. Gemma, what's your takeaway from all of this? What's the biggest thing that stands out to you?
Well, there weren't many surprises tonight because we heard so much of it over the last week already, and the leaks were very, very accurate as it turned out. I was pleased to see that the tax relief was extended to low-income earners because certainly they're the ones who have most propensity to spend it, which is obviously important. A lot of the government's assumptions for growth rely on people spending. I was also pleased to see some of the help for small businesses because they've got a very difficult few months coming up for them, and hopefully that will help some get over the line. With regards to concerns, I think there were some really heroic assumptions about the next couple of years. So in 2 years' time, in 2021 to 22, so June 22, looking at 4.75% GDP growth. We're looking at 6.5% unemployment rate and 1.5% wage growth. This seems extremely ambitious given where we are now.
All right. Now, Ros, you've spoken with the man of the moment tonight, the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg. What did he have to say?
Yeah, well, it's a 4-year plan basically for Josh Frydenberg to repair the economy before the budget before he starts to look at structural reform. But he wanted to talk about the biggest issue, just a small word, jobs. Treasurer, thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you, Mark.
This looks like a 4-year rescue mission. Is that right?
This budget's all about jobs. The Australian economy's been hit by an economic shock like no other. 10% of our workforce, Mark, either lost their job or saw their working hours reduced to zero. Fortunately, those jobs are now starting to come back as the restrictions are eased and the virus is being successfully suppressed across the country. But this budget is all about creating more jobs and helping those who are out of work get into work and those who are in a job stay in a job, and we're doing that with tax cuts, with business investment incentives, with a new hiring credit, and it's all about getting people into work.
That hiring credit, the job maker credit, will go to people aged 35 and under, and that's terrific for them, 450,000. What if you're aged 40 or 50 and you've lost your job for the first time? You feel like you're losing a competitive edge in the jobs market because these younger people will be going in there with these credits.
That is only one of many initiatives that we have across the economy to create opportunities for all people. So, for example, we have $1 billion job trainer program, which is about reskilling and retraining. We have 50,000 new short courses focusing on certain industries which will help create jobs. And of course, what we're doing on the infrastructure spend will support 40,000 jobs. What we're doing on the tax side of things will support another 100,000 jobs. This is all about creating jobs across the economy. So whatever your age, we will help you get into work.
This will be a distortion though, because those people who are younger will come with the promise of wage support that older workers, older unemployed people won't.
Well, younger people have obviously done it really tough through this crisis, Mark, and the history of previous recessions is if people stay on the unemployment queue for longer, then it's very hard for them to get in. And younger people tend to have less of the experience or less skills based on the time spent in the workforce than some of the more senior workers. So this is a measure designed to target young people and to help them into work, and we think that it should support around 450,000 jobs.
So another target is women. And economists are almost unanimous in saying if you want to encourage women back into the workforce, the way to do it is with free universal childcare. You haven't done that. Why?
Well, we have record support for childcare, but when it comes to women, we've got a women's economic security statement in this program that's supporting cadetships and apprenticeships in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and a whole range of areas.
Mentoring and childcare fees, though?
Well, again, we've got a program in place that is supporting childcare to a record amount, and it's just one of a number of initiatives that we have. But Mark, I do point out that 60% of the jobs that have been created over the last 3 months have gone to women, and while they lost a lot of jobs early, those jobs are starting to come back, and we want female workforce participation to get back to that record high that it was pre-crisis.
All right. Vaccine, when? This is predicated on a vaccine appearing when?
By the end of next year, it's our expectation and hope that a vaccine will be distributed right across the country.
That's later, because we were talking about early next year, the first quarter of next year. So what's happened?
It's a conservative assumption. We also have other scenarios in the budget which indicate that if the vaccine is found earlier, then that could be a $34 billion boost to the economy. But it just goes to the uncertainty there is around the global economy, the national economy at this time. We're dealing with a health crisis primarily, which has had a very severe economic impact.
Will the Morrison government ever deliver a surplus?
Well, certainly our intention is to strengthen the budget position, which we will do, and then we will move to strengthen that budget over time. But as for the date of the surplus, I can't give you one now.
Well, but there will be one?
Well, again, we'll always be responsible economic managers. We're focused on growing the economy, not increasing taxes, guaranteeing the essential services, and that is how we'll get into a better budget position.
We've heard those lines before. Last year was back in black. What's this, putting Australia back to work?
Jobs, jobs and more jobs. That's what this budget's all about.
Well, good luck with it, Treasurer.
Thank you.
Jobs, jobs and jobs, but not a lot of growth until that second year, as Gemma said, 4.75% growth of latent demand, everybody waiting to get out and spend, apparently, and employers to employ. It's good in theory, but as we know, Michael, in practice, sometimes theory just doesn't work. Yeah,
Mark, pick up on a couple of those points there. A vaccine a year away and a budget based on what the rest of the world staying as it is. What if economies around the world suddenly go south fast, more than they have done? Where do we end up then?
Then there's $55 billion further stripped from the bottom line. That's the Treasury prediction. But Josh Frydenberg says that late next year for a vaccine is conservative. I think they still hope that it'll be in the first half of next year and it'll be effective. And if it is, everything's hunky-dory. If it's not, the hard work just gets harder and harder. Yes, we have to wait on other economies to open up as well, but we have to reset the basic structure of our domestic economy first.
Gemma, anything that you think is missing from the budget?
Well, I was a bit surprised that there wasn't any reference to job seeker past December 31st. I really applaud the initiatives to retrain people and get them into jobs, but the reality is there's always people who are unemployed in any society. There's a frictional level of unemployment that won't go away, and it looks at this point as though we'll revert back to $40 a day. Also surprised to see, as Mark mentioned earlier, nothing for childcare. There's $240 million earmarked to help women at work, as the Treasurer just mentioned, but nothing specifically to help childcare. I think that was quite an easy help. Yeah. Bit surprised it wasn't more on social housing. The biggest housing initiative seemed to be an extra 10,000 places for the first home buyer deposit scheme, and maybe a missed opportunity for renewable energy technology for the jobs potential there, because that sector certainly believes there's a lot of job creation potential there.
That point's a bit AWOL in this budget, there's no doubt about that. Ros, you've also spoken this evening with the Shadow Treasurer. I guess we'd expect them to be critical of the budget. Are they? And given the extra pandemic challenges facing the government, are they being critical?
Well, there's a bit of nitpicking going on, Michael, but I think in the spirit of COVID consensus, the Labor Party will probably pass most, if not all, of these measures here because they don't want to stand in the way of the government handing money to people, which is essentially what they're doing at the heart of this. Let's have a listen to Shadow Treasurer Jim Chalmers. Jim Chalmers, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.
What would you do differently?
Oh, look, I think the problem with the budget is they've racked up $1 trillion in debt, still no plan for the future, still too many people left behind, and still unemployment too high for too long. One of the big concerns we have, we wouldn't have done it this way, the hiring subsidies. 928,000 Australians on unemployment benefits can't even access the hiring subsidies that the Treasurer just trumpeted.
Yeah, so it will put in disincentives for employers to employ people who are over 35.
Well, we need to make sure that we're not leaving people behind in this recovery like people have been left behind by the government in the recession. It's a remarkable feat that the government has racked up $1 trillion in debt, still hasn't done anything for those workers, hasn't done anything for childcare, hasn't done anything meaningful for cleaner and cheaper energy. The list goes on and on. Too many things have been left out, too many people left behind.
So what can't you support in this?
I will be going through it in some detail. Obviously, there'll be a lot of measures that we can support. We support the bring forward of the tax cuts. We've been calling for them for some time, as you know. We're inclined to support the business tax changes too, but there's an extraordinary amount of money attached to those, and so we'll go through the detail, but we want to be able to support some of those measures as well.
You mentioned childcare. Would Labor offer free childcare?
Oh, look, we'll work through all of our options between now and the election, but clearly one of the glaring deficiencies in this budget, when you think about what's been left out, childcare, who's been left out, those workers I mentioned, but also women largely, then clearly there's a job to do for any future Labor government to try and fill the gaps that the government has left.
Do you agree with economists that the best way to get women back into the workforce is to provide universal free childcare?
Oh, it's a massive part of the puzzle, obviously, but it's not the only thing. I mean, you look across this budget, some things we can support, but $1 trillion in debt with all of the gaps that we can see there, and clearly women and clearly childcare are one of those.
Should we really be worried about debt and deficit at a time like this?
Oh, we should, but at a time like this, it's not the highest priority. Right now, the highest priority is support people, their jobs, their small businesses, their communities. If we do that, we give ourselves a chance to fix the budget.
And the tax cuts, are they big enough?
Oh, well, it remains to be seen. I mean, some of the forecasts, remain to be tested, but we support the tax cuts. One of the concerns we have, though, is JobKeeper is being withdrawn at the same time. If you're an average worker, you'll get about $50 a fortnight in tax cuts at the same time as millions of workers lose $300 a fortnight in JobKeeper. And so they're clearly $250 in the hole, and that's a problem.
So the stage 3 tax cuts aren't being brought forward, so that's for higher income earners. You must be happy about that.
Yeah, we're not big fans of stage 3 of the tax cuts. We think that they're the least affordable, least responsible.
So they should be ditched.
Well, we'll come to a view on that closer to their implementation. They don't come in for some years down the track. We've got some nearer term priorities, but we've said for some time now that we'll review them. We're not big fans of them. We do support tax relief for low and middle income earners. They need the help, and they're more likely to spend it in the economy.
Is the government spending enough, too much?
Well, it remains to be seen. Our issue is that we don't think the government is spending money effectively. We've seen all of the rorts, all of the pork barrelling. We saw a Liberal donor get paid $30 million for a $3 million parcel of land. There's been a debacle at the NBN. So we think there's been a lot of waste and mismanagement. We want the government to spend the money effectively. We want their policies to succeed, because if they fail, that means the unemployment queues are even longer than they need to be.
Jim Chalmers, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, the opposition treasurer there. We're going to hear a lot about that $1 trillion for a long time to come, I think, Riles. Let me ask you this question. There was concerns raised, this was surprising, concerns raised in the budget about a population collapse.
Yeah, look, this is a real issue, Michael. It's a structural issue for policymakers. The projection for the population was at 27 million the end of in 2 years' time. Now that's been revised down by 1 million people. There is no migration, and birth rates are very low. So that's 1 million people fewer than was predicted just last year. So it's 1 million fewer taxpayers. That's like Adelaide being wiped off the map of Australia. It's quite a big structural thing. So that will make a big difference, and it means that the government now has to find a way to bridge that population gap. As you said earlier, other countries aren't opening their borders, the global economy has not fired back up, so there is no movement of people, and that is a structural issue for Australia.
Gemma, how do we turn that number around?
Well, not to dwell any more on childcare because it's got a lot of airtime already. But you look, if you want households to work and you want households to have bigger families, then that seems a very obvious link. I do think that once borders do reopen, however far that is down the track, that this will look like a very inviting place to move to. So I think migration will pick up when it does. And just very quickly, we need to turn to productivity more. Productivity has been falling for a long time, and if we're not getting population growth, then we certainly need productivity growth in order to prop up our growth rate.
In 10 seconds to each of you, this budget, good, bad, can it protect us from a COVID recession? Gemma first.
Oh gosh, look, I think it'll help us for a short period of time.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's enough to transition us to a permanently sustained, strong economy.
Riles?
Good, I would say, Michael, a tick on most measures, but I think that we're all in the hands of an unpredictable virus, and it really is determining our future.
Ain't that the truth? Gemma, you're sticking with me. Mark Riley in Canberra, good job today again, as always. Thank you for that tonight.
Thanks much.
Still to come, we'll have more reaction from industry leaders and some of the country's most influential lobby groups. A leading economist on what the budget means for your household, jobs and the property market. Then what needs to happen in the next few days to see Melbourne's lockdown lifted? And is Donald Trump running the USA while experiencing a steroid psychosis? New details about the president's cocktail of anti-COVID drugs. That's all next here on The Latest from 7 News. We're back shortly.
right now. Cruise ships by the hundreds lying abandoned across the globe. The $150 billion industry on the brink. How it became ground zero.
They knew they had a sick person on board and they still went ahead.
For the first time, see how easily it spreads, how they got it so wrong.
There's a lot the cruise industry doesn't want you to know.
What is the future?
It's like reinventing the wheel.
It'll come back, it'll just be a little different.
Cruising the biggest storm, Sunday at 7 on 7.
Barbecue seen better days? This daylight savings give Old Faithful a well-earned retirement and get down to barbecues galore. Barbecues galore. The range, the price, the knowledge. Now you're cooking.
Go on.
At Devondale, we believe great milk comes from cows that graze free.
Reckon he's happy with that. Wait till he sees this. Power play is available on Sportsbet's AFL Same Game Multi. Just hit the button and watch your odds get bigger. Power play your AFL Same Game Multi with Sportsbet.
Great foodness in Foodland, the mighty South Aussies, yeah.
Amazon Prime Day is back. On the 13th and 14th of October, save big on Amazon devices, home and kitchen, electronics, and so much more. Prime Day, the 13th and 14th of October.
Make more of the things you want possible with Cash Converters. Life made possible.
Looking to repair dry, damaged hair without weighing it down?
Try new Pantene shampoo and conditioner. Its silicone-free formula helps to protect against daily stresses. For 100% stronger hair, try new Pantene.
Ready for any challenge. Battery power by Still. Only from your local Still dealer.
Hey mate, have you seen the Sportsbet app now has Sky Racing?
Really?
Yep. Live racing from all around Australia right there on your phone.
Oh, I'm liking this.
Yeah, just one tap and you're streaming from Randwick, Caulfield, Ascot, Dapto Dogs.
Righto, mate, I get it. What are you, the Sportsbet guy now or something?
I actually do a pretty good impression.
This is new. Sky Racing, now available on the Sportsbet app.
Bloody hell, that's pretty good.
I told you.
Get down to barbecues galore for red hot savings like Next Grill Deluxe 4-burner barbecue now $5.99. This new release Kamado featuring ceramic construction and folding shelves now $7.99. And up to 40% off outdoor lounges. Barbecues galore.
Welcome back to this special edition of The Latest as we unpack the most crucial federal budget that's been handed down since World War II. Tonight, the government, as you've been hearing, has unveiled tax cuts, new employment incentives and spending on health infrastructure and small business. Our 7 finance editor, Gemma Acton, remains with me now, and we're joined by our political correspondent, Tim Lester, who's live in Canberra for us. Tim, good evening to you. Let's go to you first. What is the reaction to this budget tonight from where you've been?
Well, perhaps the first thing to say, Michael, is it has been far more muted than you'd expect of budgets during parliamentary sittings. You know from past years that hundreds of people pack this place on a budget night typically, and scores of chief executives line up from their interest groups to give comments on what they do and don't like about the budget. None of that tonight. Social distancing, the pandemic has demanded that the interest groups stay away and go to a far smaller gathering down the road at Old Parliament House. So just as the pandemic has guided the budget itself, it's guided the reaction to the budget. Some reaction, though, from business. They're generally happy. The Australian Industry Group calls the budget stimulatory, inclusive, confidence-building and forward-looking, particularly flattering of the infrastructure spending and the bringing forward of the tax cuts. Far less flattering, the Australian Council of Social Service, ACOS, calls it a crushing letdown for many without paid work. Here's some of the reaction we've heard from Old Parliament House tonight.
This is a budget for business, new and old. This is a budget that will energise Australian entrepreneurs.
By and large, this is a good budget for farmers, a good budget for rural and regional economies.
I'm deeply disappointed because I think the Aged Care Royal Commission was sending a very strong message last year. So what we're hoping is that the next budget's going to fix the problem, because this one's certainly not going to fix the problem in aged care.
This is what we've called for, and we're pleased to see the government delivering more money to pensioners who both need it and will spend it into the economy.
Interesting point about aged care. We're going to talk about that in the next segment of this program as well. Tim, the budget, as we were talking to Mark Riley a little earlier about, relies on a COVID vaccine being in place in 1 year's time, conservative estimate from the Treasurer. Has there been much comment on whether Treasury has been realistic on that issue?
Not much yet. The one comment we've heard from economists was essentially to take the number on trust, and perhaps they have to, because it's largely, of course, a scientific or medical question. But it is an absolutely critical question to this budget, and you get that sense when you get deeper into the documents beyond the sort of glossy pamphlet part of the budget. In the documents, Treasury confesses essentially that they've had to base the whole budget, those big numbers, debt numbers particularly, on there being a vaccine not only invented but in common use by late next year and protecting the people and the economy. They've modelled, if that's delayed, this was the point that Mark was making earlier, and were it delayed simply about 6 to 8 months to mid-2022, they acknowledge that costing the economy $55 billion more, just that delay, and 1% off those, some would say, optimistic growth numbers. A really big hit for a relatively small delay in getting a vaccine. This budget rests on that vaccine turning up, and if it doesn't, Treasury admits the numbers will essentially be wrecked.
Jimmy, your thoughts on that? I mean, there's no doubt a vaccine would be a magic wand here in terms of the budget and our woes. Possible or not, or is that year estimate a good conservative estimate?
I think it generally takes a lot longer to manufacture and distribute to everybody a vaccine. It might not even be one dose of a vaccine you need. You might need several doses for certain conditions, so we have to wait and see what that is. We also haven't distinguished about what happens overseas.
Yeah, good point.
It's going to take a really long time to get this vaccine out around the world as well, even if Australia is lucky enough to be ahead and get it before other countries. Yeah. But how does that impact our education, our tourism, our airlines, our airports? So many industries here, huge industries that rely on the borders being open.
No, good point. All right, Tim Lester, we're going to leave you there in Canberra. And we should say also, Tim, a very big thank you. You're about to board a plane now and head to our US bureau to jump into that US presidential campaign, and we really look forward to crossing to you in the very colourful United States right now. So good luck with that big trip. Thank you.
Good on you, Michael.
For more reaction, let's bring in Deloitte partner economist Chris Richardson, who's also in Canberra. Chris, good evening to you. An extension of the tax cut, so there's more in it for lower income Australians, not just middle and higher income Australians. It's been expected. Is extending the lower and middle income tax offset for another year the right move, do you think?
Look, absolutely. Money makes the world go around, and Australia desperately needs money to be spent right now. That's one of the key measures in the budget that short term will help keep money getting spent.
Should the government have gone further, though, do you think, Chris, and brought forward those stage 3 tax cuts?
The stage 3 tax cuts have a bad reputation. They are entirely fair, but they're not terribly good stimulus, and the politics of them are tricky. I understand why they've left those behind.
Let me ask you about the job maker. Now, business is going to take on new workers and apprentices just because the government is helping with their wages, do you think? Or are they going to need to see, I guess, evidence of demand picking up first?
Look, it's a beautiful policy, it's the right idea, and you can accelerate a job recovery, which is exactly what we should be aiming for. But it does require other things to go right. It requires, Melbourne's COVID numbers to stay down. As you were just talking about with Gemma, the vaccine story to be sooner rather than later. Australians to get their confidence back. If a bunch of things go right, the budget can work really well. If they don't, we may need to go back to the Treasurer for more support.
Yeah, and Gemma, let me bring in, there's a few ifs in there, isn't there?
There certainly are. I think another big if, which wasn't mentioned there, but builds on the same ideas that Chris has mentioned, is credit. The government's done everything it can to open the floodgates so businesses and individuals can get more credit. They've rolled back these responsible lending laws. But it's the same point. A business is going to feel confident enough to borrow when there's so much uncertainty, just like are they going to feel confident enough to take on new apprentices and workers?
They're going to wait for a bit, aren't they, and just see this is going to be an instant rush at jobs.
I would imagine so.
Chris, what do you think? Is there enough in here for our most vulnerable Australians, those needing mental health support, the aged, for example?
Well, pensioners are getting something. Mental health is a good point, not enough. And our largest big group of disadvantaged are the unemployed. The government keeps saying that come the end of 2020, it will consider a permanent increase to the unemployment benefit. It should announce it now. For those who are worst off in our society, you've got to give them a feel for where they go from here. That, if nothing else, will give them confidence. And that's important now for 1.5 million Australians.
So, Chris, in your opinion then, is this all enough to knock out the risk of that potential fiscal cliff in March once JobSeeker and JobKeeper are finished?
There's a lot here, but it may not be enough. Yeah, lots of band-aids coming off the Australian economy. The government sought to soothe that a little, but will it be enough? We may not know till March. But yes, there is a chance we may still need more.
Yeah, Gemma, can you still see that cliff in March? Have we stepped back from it or not?
I think we can't forget the other things that are happening as well. The bank loan deferrals are also rolling off. A lot of rent deferrals are also rolling off, and people have stored up a lot of this year's problems, been able to put them off, but they're mounting on the other side, so there's certainly a huge wall there.
All right, we'll see in the morning how everyone reacts to this. Gemma Acton, thanks for being here again. Chris Richardson from Deloitte too, always good to talk to you. Thank you. Thanks. Still to come, we'll go live to Washington DC as Donald Trump refuses to rest, plus exactly what was in his cocktail of drugs. Melbourne's concerning COVID cluster that could extend lockdown. Our reporter has the new details. Money laundering accusations, James Packer's high-stakes inquiry over Crown Casino's behaviour, all from his super yacht. And on the loose, the strange police pursuit for deer running wild through Sydney suburbs. That's all next, here on the latest from 7 News. Back in a minute.
Two retail giants targeting every Australian online shopper with a record discount war. Full details, 7 News at 6.
Our expert team
Local
has
news happens 7 days a week. The most trusted, the most experienced. Adelaide turns to 7 News.
That's the one for you.
Oh, no. There's too many choices. I'm going to filter through these fillies fast. Should she be
rock hard fit and have won her last start? Or have a history of riding winners? Or is it all about a consistent strike rate?
You know you can select all three of us.
Find your perfect match to your form preferences easily with Ned's Filter Form. Take it to the Ned's level. Think of the people who need your support. Gamble responsibly.
When it comes to looking after my body, I believe in being body smart. Nature's Own joints and muscle products help to relieve mild joint pain and support muscle function. Be body smart with Nature's Own.
Available at Chemist Warehouse.
There's an unspoken promise to care for your pet. At Pet Barn, we'll help you keep it every day with 60-minute click and collect and an instant price match promise. Visit Pet Barn today.
Your idea of outdoor living is what Trex brings to life.
Trek's composite decking and railing features all the beauty of timber without all of the work. It's engineered to never rot, splinter or warp and comes with a 25-year warranty. Plus, Trex is made from 95% recycled materials. To learn how to bring the performance and durability of Trex decking to your backyard, visit au.trex.com for more inspiration and next steps.
Welcome back. Well, just 3 days after he was admitted to hospital with coronavirus, the US President Donald Trump is back in the White House tonight. Let's cross live to our US Bureau Chief Ashley Mullaney in Washington, D.C. Ash, good evening to you from here. It's hard to even think of a first question to ask you, but I guess we should ask, how's the President looking after leaving hospital?
Well, I mean, he looked pretty well when he walked out with that signature fist pump and a big thumbs up for the cameras, clearly looking to project some strength, wasn't he, Mush? But as you can imagine, every frame, every second of that video has been pulled apart and analysed, and there are some people saying that he looked a little out of breath by the time he got back to the White House and walked up that 2 flights of stairs. I mean, that in itself could have been a little ambitious given he's just been released from hospital, and we know that on at least 2 occasions he was placed on oxygen and he is still on this cocktail of experimental drugs, but he was certainly well enough to then walk out and deliver what was a pretty carefully choreographed campaign video urging Americans not to be afraid of coronavirus. Perhaps we can have a little listen.
I didn't feel so good. And 2 days ago, I could have left 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I felt great, like better than I have in a long time. I said just recently, better than 20 years ago. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune, I don't know. But don't let it dominate your lives. Get out there, be careful.
I mean, the interesting thing is, Mush, how is that going to play out with the American people? I mean, this was a big opportunity here for Donald Trump to come out and deliver a big message about this, about his experience, about masks, perhaps, and to say that it's not a big deal or to frame it like it's not a big deal, you know, that could be insulting to some 200,000 families who have lost loved ones here, but he clearly still wants to downplay this issue.
Well, he clearly wants to keep on campaigning too. I mean, that could be seen like an incredible piece of propaganda today. I mean, that whole scene coming out of the helicopter, the carefully crafted video, the speech, the presentation, it was like something out of one of his reality TV shows. So I guess the question is, Ash, is he going to be attending these upcoming presidential debates?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And when we first heard about this diagnosis, I thought this is out of the question. You know, we've probably just seen our first and last debate. But in fact, the Trump campaign has said he wants to get back on the stage with Joe Biden. Now, that's on the 15th of October down in Miami. And the campaign has said that he does want to go out there. And by that point, he will have passed his isolation period, according to the CDC guidelines. So he'll be wanting to get back out on the stage, back on the trail, because he's trailing Joe Biden in the polls at the moment. And that is where Trump thrives. He's in front of a crowd or in front of a camera. And as we've seen over the last few days, he doesn't want to stay in isolation. He certainly doesn't want to stay away from the limelight for too long. And there is so much riding on this. I mean, we're less than 30 days until polling day. So absolutely, he'll be wanting to get back out on the trail. And I think you know, nothing would shock me. I wouldn't even be surprised if he's back out doing rallies. I think nothing would surprise me.
You'd never underestimate it. The thing you to remember is here, he's infected and infectious.
Yeah, I mean, I heard this line on CNN a couple of nights ago where they talked about the Secret Service agents who were in that vehicle, and the anchor said, well, they sign up to take a bullet for the president, not from the president. This is just a wild set of circumstances, but, you know, certainly the White House has said that this group of people have been there to support him every step along the way here. But I think as soon as he's given the all clear by doctors, I think we can expect to see him back out and about if he's well enough.
No doubt about that. All right, Ash Mullaney, right outside the White House, our US Bureau Chief, thank you. Confusion and mixed messages surround the president's condition, but experts say his experimental treatment plan indicates his case could be more severe than the White House is letting on. Infectious diseases paediatrician Professor Robert Boyd joins me now. Professor Boyd, good to talk to you again. Now, Trump has been given a steroid treatment called dexamethasone. Now, that would usually be reserved for severe cases, is that right?
Absolutely, but also it's given in a very high dose so that the chance of side effects is increased. It's possible to get what's called a steroid psychosis, where you essentially lose touch with reality, and we've seen examples of that with him tweeting every 2 minutes in capital letters. We've seen him saying he's as healthy as he was 20 years ago. Quite preposterous things which suggest that the steroids are affecting him.
I guess the question then, given that this man is the leader of the United States, how long do those effects last?
Well, they can last only a few days, but up to several weeks. Generally, you're only given one dose of high-dose steroids, dexamethasone, and you should get relief from the side effects within days, but people have had problems for up to 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, if you administered that, what would be the advice you would give to the patient? For example, could they drive a car? Should they return to work?
I would say take it easy. I would say take time off work. I would say wait until you're getting better. There's a real risk that in the next week that COVID-19 will get worse and affect his lungs. He's already showing signs of shortness of breath, and I'm really quite concerned for his health.
Doctors have also given him an experimental antibody cocktail. Do we know if that has any promise?
Well, it's only been used in a few dozen people. He got advanced emergency approval from the FDA. It looks very promising, but there's no evidence yet that it's actually effective.
He's also received an intravenous antiviral drug, which is remdesivir. What is that and how does it work?
It's a drug which stops the virus from replicating, from making new viruses. It's only been shown so far to reduce the time in hospital. It hasn't actually been shown to reduce the mortality.
How infectious is Donald Trump at the moment then, do you think? And, for example, would you stand in a room with him without a mask in the White House?
Absolutely not. For him to go out in public, in a car, exposing his security detail to possible infection is just stupid.
That vision we just saw then, he's on the balcony of the White House, his big return, saluting, taking the mask off quite symbolically. Your view of that?
Well, I think it's probably an example of what the steroids are doing to him. It makes you more exuberant, it makes you more likely to feel good about yourself and maybe to take more risks than you should.
All right. Professor Robert Boy, thank you.
You're welcome.
Still to come, Melbourne's contact tracers have hit a hurdle. We'll tell you what that means for the city's lockdown. James Packer's poker face, the latest on Crown Casino's money laundering allegations. Will Anastasia Palaszczuk's border battle be the end of her premiership? Well, not. We cross to Queensland as the state election campaign kicks off. And amazing pictures that could help our beach safety. The 50-year-old monster great white caught and tagged. We'll show you how that all unfolded. We'll have more of 7 News, the latest, right after this.
Do you? There's a above your head. Let's go.
We're going to find out who they really are, and so will they.
SAS Australia starts Monday, October 19 on 7.
This spring, Ladbrokes is changing the way you multi. With our new split and blended features, load up your multi-legs with runners from the same race, and if any of them get up, you win. Ladbrokes. Back yourself. Gamble responsibly.
Oh, should I? With great flavour and 50% less fat, it's easy to say, oh yes. Go on. Say yes to new Smith's Oven Baked.
Amazon Prime Day is back. On the 13th and 14th of October, save big on Amazon devices, home and kitchen, electronics, and so much more. Prime Day, the 13th and 14th of October.
Hey, so then.
Libre. The eau de parfum and the new eau de parfum intense. Yves Saint Laurent.
Discover your signature scent.
I am my store.
When it comes to matters concerning motor vehicle injury law, workplace injury compensation and family law, trust DBH to deliver the best outcomes.
Call 1800 324 324. Duncan Bashir Hannon. Don't settle for less.
New James Squire Broken Shackles Refreshing Lager.
This spring, Ladbrokes is changing the way you multi. With our new split and blended features, load up your multi-legs with runners from the same race, and if any of them get up, you win. Ladbrokes. Back yourself. Gamble responsibly.
As Victoria records its highest day of cases in more than a week, it's been revealed the state's second wave is 10 times harder to contact trace. Chanel Vella has more. Chanel, good evening. What did the Chief Health Officer have to say today?
Well, that's right. Contact tracing has always been a sore point in Victoria, but today our Chief Health Officer, Professor Brett Sutton, has revealed that it's been 10 times harder in this second wave than it has in the first. Now, let's take a look at our daily numbers. Today we recorded 15 new cases and 1 new death. That is higher than what we've seen in recent days. We know Wednesdays are often spike days, and that could be attributed today's number to the fact that we've had so many tests in the last 24 hours, around 9,200 tests. We know 8 of today's daily cases can be linked to known outbreaks, but there is that worry around the fact that 7 are still under investigation. We know our all-important rolling 14-day average is very, very important. Right now it sits at around 10.6. Now, for Melbourne to take the next step, that needs to sit around 5. And if you do the calculations, that means for the next 14 days, we can only average around 4 new cases. That's going to be extremely difficult. Even the Chief Health Officer says he's very closely looking at those numbers to see if we can get there. We want to try and get there by October 19, but it's going to be very, very tough.
We are at a point now where we could snuff this out. But the challenges with each and every case, with each and every network of those close contacts is enormous. I cannot emphasise it enough.
And Chanel, there are fears that a lingering cluster may cause some problems.
Well, that's right. There is one cluster that is very worrying right now in metropolitan Melbourne. It started in the southeast in a shopping centre, particularly at a butcher. We know a cleaner went to that butcher to work while she was sick. Now, a known through contact tracing, they've worked out one person from that cluster has then travelled to regional Victoria. They did so with a permit, but if you're travelling from Metro Melbourne into regional Victoria, you're only meant to get takeaway. This person sat down at a cafe and had a meal. They were there for 45 minutes. They've then spread it to the person they were dining with. They've also spread it to another waitress. Of course, this is causing very big worry here in Victoria as to how big this cluster could get. It now sits at 28, but of course all eyes are watching very closely to see where it spreads and how quickly.
Okay, Chanel Vella in Melbourne, thank you. Former Crown Resorts boss James Packer has appeared before the New South Wales inquiry today over money laundering allegations against the casino companies. Serena Andaloro is our reporter. She joins me live with the latest. Serena, hello to you. Now, Mr Packer dialed in via a video link from his super yacht.
Michael, a very good evening to you. Some very sensational evidence coming out of this state parliamentary inquiry into Crown's casino licence. Yes, Mr Packer, billionaire businessman, majority shareholder currently and former chairman of the company, dialed in today from his luxury super yacht, which was moored in Tahiti, from where you'd rather be, right? But this inquiry is actually investigating some pretty serious allegations where the Crown enabled Asian criminal groups to launder money through Crown. And it was even revealed today, the inquiry heard there were attempts to privatise the Crown Tower here. Mr Packer, in emails, threatening a potential buyer. Mr Packer says his behaviour was disgraceful. It came at a low point and he was very sick at the time.
That's the vision we're seeing now, the inquiry today. Now, Mr Packer admitted, is that right, Serena, to being prescribed medication which may have affected his recollection of events during his time as Crown boss. Let's hear from him now.
You say that you believe that this has impaired your ability
to recall past events, including in relation to the period that you were a Director of Crown Resorts. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, Serena, when is a decision going to be handed down from this inquiry?
Yeah, Michael, when all this is over, it's expected the inquiry will outline some very strict conditions that Crown will need to meet in order to continue to operate. It could even recommend that Crown be stripped of its casino licence. So some pretty serious stuff. Mr Packer, we know, is expected to front the inquiry again tomorrow. All right, Serena, outside the Barangaroo development in Sydney. Thank you for that. A Bundaberg teenager has died in a crash at Cecil Plains near Dalby. 16-year-old Brock Daniel was killed when the car he was travelling in left the road and rolled several times. His girlfriend, who was pregnant with twins, survived the crash along with 2 other passengers. Well, the countdown to the upcoming Queensland election has officially begun, with Anastasia Palaszczuk and opposition leader Deb Frecklington hitting the campaign trail. It is the first time in Australia's federal or state political history that 2 female leaders are vying for the top job. Joining us now is our reporter Patrick Lyon in Brisbane tonight. Patrick, g'day to you. Now, it is predicted to be a tight election, is that right?
Yes, the polls are up and down. Both sides say it's going to come down to the campaign, and it could even be a hung parliament, and which wasn't really the idea when Queensland shifted to a 4-year fixed term for more certainty. The state's very volatile electorally, almost 2 different Queenslands between the southeast and the regions, and this will come down to a seat-by-seat battle in those key marginals in both the southeast and the regions.
Now, both parties put the economy at the top of their agendas, which is no great surprise, with an aim to get back on track following the COVID-19 pandemic. Patrick, let's hear from them now.
So I'm asking Queenslanders to continue to show their support for the work that we have done in containing that health crisis and now that we are tackling the economic recovery.
This election is all about who you trust with the Queensland economy and to create jobs.
All right, Patrick, you've only just hit the campaign trail, but what can we expect in the coming weeks?
I think we're going to see a lot of time in the regions targeting these key seats in Cairns, Townsville, the Whitsundays. The Premier's flown to Mount Isa this afternoon. Deb Frecklington will kick off her campaign tomorrow in the southeast. But I've got to disappoint you. I doubt we're going to see many politicians kissing babies. Not very COVID safe.
Not at all. All right. Good luck on the campaign trail. Patrick Lyon in Brisbane. Thank you. The RSPCA is still trying to find a deer spotted roaming the streets of Sydney's inner west this morning. There it is. Animal experts managed to capture one of the 2 wild animals, which sadly had to be put down later on. The RSPCA says the pair could have travelled down the train lines from a rural area. Still to come, new claims ageism led to the crisis in Australia's care homes. The Queen of the Ocean, Canadian scientists encounter an enormous great white. And marching on at 101 years young, the story behind tonight's final frame. He's a terrific man. That's all next, here on the latest from 7 News.
I was there when Colby shot him. And then I helped him cover it up.
Will he choose his best friend or the law?
I know you are protecting him. This is your chance to save yourself.
Why should I be punished for something that Colby did?
This week,
What did you say?
it will explode.
I'm not cleaning up your mess anymore.
He's playing you. Why can't you see that?
You know, for someone who's got nothing to hide, you seem a little stressed.
Will he break?
Pick a side.
Home and Away, this week at 7.
There's an unspoken promise to care for your pet. At Pet Barn, we'll help you keep it every day. With same-day delivery and an instant price match promise. Visit Pet Barn today.
My perfect bowl?
Plain cornflakes and plain cold milk.
Warm milk? Shortbread?
No, not in the cornflakes.
You gotta have the peaches and the bananas.
Yes, ma'am.
Audible is excellent for unwinding in bed with a cuppa.
Doesn't smell like a cup of tea.
Well, it's not tea. It's hard tea. What are you, the tea police? Download now and get your first audiobook free.
If dry or flaky skin is causing you frustration and embarrassment, try E45 cream. It soothes and relieves by creating an effective barrier to protect against skin dryness. Feel comfortable in your skin. Switch to E45.
We're here at the Stradco home stadium. What a hit. Go the green and gold. Look at this crowd support. Now, over to you, Australia. This Stradco National Patio Day celebrates summer in the shade and help raise funds for Cancer Council.
Beautiful, aren't they? They migrated to Aldi.
They get their fresh stuff from the same place as other supermarkets.
Barbados.
No, son. Australia.
Aussie fruit, veg and meat at Aldi prices. That's good different.
This spring, Ladbrokes is changing the way you multi, putting the power in your hands and giving you more chances to win. With our new split and blended features, load up your multi-legs with runners from the same race, and if any of them get up, you win. Get all the racing multi-combinations you want, done in one. Ladbrokes. Back yourself. Think of the people who need your support. Gamble responsibly.
The most important budget in a generation. What it means for you. Koshi and the experts break it down on Sunrise tomorrow.
Welcome back again. Major tax cuts and jobs are the main focus of what's been billed as the biggest federal budget since World War II, as we've been speaking about this evening. For a bit more on that, let's bring in tonight's panellists, Dee Madigan and Carolyn Overington. Ladies, good evening to you both. Dee, I'll start with you. There's criticism that the tax cuts for the rich, as job seeker payments are slashed, not the best way to stimulate the economy. You're in Canberra. You've sat and had a listen to all of this. What do you think of that?
Look, I think that's true. The fact is that if you give tax cuts to richer people, they tend to pocket the money, whereas anyone on a lower income who gets extra money tends to spend it. It goes straight back into the economy. So that is a concern, I think. I think the biggest concern, however, is the fact that anyone over 35 doesn't get any stimulus for employment. And I feel like we're going to have this cohort of people who are often the primary wage earners, who've got mortgages, kids, who'll be unemployed for the first time in their life, and there's no incentive to hire them. And I think this is going to be a major problem.
Carolyn, what do you think of that? And do you think also that lower income Australians have been left out of the budget?
Oh, look, I've heard that criticism today, and I think it's a little unfair. I mean, in addition to the job seeker and the job keeper, we now have the job maker, which is designed to encourage employers to get young people, in particularly the low paid, into jobs. The tax cuts will go to lower paid people, of course, and they will be more likely to spend it. And then also you also have payments, direct payments to pensioners who are by definition low income people as well. So I think it's unfair. I mean, the main problem with it is, can you encourage people to spend the money that's suddenly in their pocket? If we're in a panic mode and we're thinking, well, we can't travel, we don't know when this is going to get better, and people put it in the bank, then it doesn't do anything to stimulate the economy.
Aged care seemed to be a little overlooked in the budget, but we've got to pour through it a bit further still. A new report, however, today says it's a national emergency and the government needs to invest more and boost the rights of older Australians. Carolyn, we're talking about a terrible discrimination and neglect of the elderly, but lots of recommendations, not a lot of action.
The problem that the government had with this tonight was that there is a Royal Commission underway into aged care, and it isn't due to report until February. Now, when it does, there'll be a range of recommendations, and we don't yet know what they'll be or what they'll cost. So I think they were waiting for that. You've got 23,000 home care packages, which are designed to keep elderly people in their own homes for longer, which elderly people want. And I'm interested in whether or not families want that too, because you could talk to any number of people who have been to an aged care centre and the conditions can be terrible.
Dee?
Yeah, but you've got 23,000 people getting that package and 100,000 people waiting for it.
Yeah.
And in terms of aged care as well, yes, the final report isn't out, but the interim report is. And that interim report was titled Neglect. So the idea that they should be waiting for this final report is absurd. They should be doing something now. It is a national disgrace.
There has been a lot of money spent on aged care during the COVID pandemic, to try to deal with it. Obviously not enough. We know that aged care has been one of the sites of a lot of the infections. No question something has to be done. This budget seemed to be very much focused on jobs, getting people back to work, getting the economy moving again. The next budget isn't that far away.
Let me jump to the US now, the other thing we've been talking about tonight, where medical experts have slammed the President Trump, for removing that mask when he got back to the White House just after 3 days after his hospitalisation for COVID. Dee, removing that mask, I mean, an incredible bit of theatre in his return to the White House. Stage managed or propaganda? What do you think?
Well, both. It's high risk. It's a high risk strategy. If someone he's infected dies of COVID, his campaign is completely blown out of the water. If it doesn't, this might actually help his campaign. Like, he's not an idiot when it comes to these things. He's a terrible human being, but he's not an idiot.
Carolyn, we know not to underestimate President Trump's ability to turn a situation like this around. What do you think of all of the movements, the video, the return to the White House, the removal of the mask? Is it going to work in his favour?
I thought it was absolutely disgraceful, and I don't really care whether it works in his favour or not. I just think that the idea that you would put fellow human beings, their lives at risk, I mean, like Dee is saying, I mean, we're now at the stage in the US where it's possible that the president may kill somebody on the road to re-election. That's an awful situation to be in, and it's quite right to say the Secret Service are there to take a bullet for him, not a bullet from him. It's terrible what he did, getting in the car, taking off the mask, being reckless with people's health, being at the White House, not isolating properly, and I haven't yet even heard him mention the name of his wife, who is also infected.
Well, this was a fascinating point. All those tweets he punched out today as well, there were more than a dozen of them, probably more than 20 in fact, not a mention of his wife, not a mention of any of the other 210,000 Americans who've died as a result of COVID-19 at all.
Yes, and to say something like, well, you know, you just don't let it overtake your life. It has literally taken the lives of 200,000 people and in the United States alone and infected millions more.
Dee, what do you think of that?
Oh, well, I think he is on brand. He's a total sociopath. Like, he has no empathy for anyone else, and that's been consistent. So, you know, he's completely on brand.
Dee in Canberra, Carolyn in Sydney, thanks for your company again tonight.
Good night.
Pleasure.
Your Wednesday weather forecast and the final frame, they're next here on the latest from 7 News. Back shortly.